Guys, so this is the last video for Of Mice and Men. It's for the end of chapter 6. By now you should have finished reading the book, and boy, what an ending. So I have been waiting this whole unit to, because there's so many good Of Mice and Men memes. But anyway, so I want to read with you the final section. So just to remember where we are, Lenny has killed Curly's wife. Curly has gathered up a posse, and George is with them, and they are going to hunt down Lenny and kill him, right? But George breaks off away from the group and goes and finds Lenny at the secret hiding place that they picked out in the very beginning of the story, where George tells Lenny, "You go here if you ever get into trouble." Okay, and so Lenny does as George wanted him to do, and George goes and meets Lenny there, and that's where I'm going to pick up reading here. Okay, so let's blow this up a little bit. Okay. So I'm reading toward the end of chapter 6, very end of the book. Lenny said craftily, "Tell me like you'd done before." "Tell you what?" "About the other guys and about us." George said, "Guys like us got no family. They make a little stake and then they blow it in. They ain't got nobody in the world that gives a hoot in hell about 'em." "But not us," Lenny cried happily. "Tell about us now." George was quiet for a moment. "But not us," he said. Because I got you and I got you and we got each other. That's what gives a hoot in hell about us," Lenny cried in triumph. The little evening breeze blew over the clearing, and the leaves rustled, and the wind waves flowed up the green pool, and the shouts of men sounded again, this time much closer than before. So it means that the mob with Curly and all the other guys from the farm are getting a little bit closer to where George and Lenny are. George took off his hat. He said shakily, "Take off your hat, Lenny. The air feels fine." Lenny removed his hat dutifully and laid it on the ground in front of him. The shadow in the valley was bluer, and the evening came fast. On the wind, the sound of crashing in the brush came to them. Lenny said, "Tell how it's going to be, George." George had been listening to the distant sounds. For a moment, he was businesslike. "Look across the river, Lenny, and I'll tell you so you can almost see it." Lenny turned his head and looked off across the pool and up the darkening slopes of the Gabberlands. "We going to get a little place," George began. He reached in his side pocket and brought out Carlson's Luger. He snapped off the safety, and the gun lay on the ground behind Lenny's back. Okay, that's the right one. He looked at the back of Lenny's head at the place where the spine and the skull were joined. So remember the dog, right? Candy's dog. They said they would shoot him at the base of the head where he wouldn't feel any pain at all, right? So Steinbeck was setting up this whole scene even way back then, comparing Lenny to the dog. And remember in the very beginning of the story, Steinbeck uses animal descriptions a lot to describe Lenny. So a man's voice called from up the river, and another man answered. "Go on," said Lenny. George raised the gun, and his hand shook, and he dropped his hand to the ground again. "Go on," said Lenny. "How's it going to be? We going to get a little place?" "We'll have a cow," said George, "and we'll have maybe a pig and chickens, and down the flat we'll have a little piece of alfalfa." "For the rabbits?" Lenny shouted. "For the rabbits," George repeated. "And I get to tend the rabbits?" "And you get to tend the rabbits." Lenny giggled with happiness. "And live on the fat of the land." "Yes." Lenny turned his head. "No, Lenny. Look down there across the river, like you can almost see the place." Lenny obeyed him. George looked down at the gun. There were crashing footsteps in the brush now. George turned and looked toward them. Go on, George. When are we going to do it? Going to do it soon. Me and you and me. Everybody going to be nice to you. Ain't going to be no more trouble. Nobody going to hurt nobody nor steal from them. Lenny said, I thought you was mad at me, George. No, said George. No, Lenny, I ain't mad. I ain't never been mad, and I ain't mad now. That's the thing I want you to know. The voices came closer. George raised the gun and listened to the voices. Lenny begged, Let's do it now. Let's get that place now. Sure, right now. We gotta. George raised the gun and steadied it, and he brought the muzzle of it close to the back of Lenny's head. The hand shook violently, but his face set and his hand steadied. He pulled the trigger. So, George kills Lenny. And there are so many references to this scene in the end where George has to kill Lenny here. And he kind of has, in my opinion, he has to kill him to save him, because just keeps happening to him. And eventually, one of these times, he's not going to get away. And then he's going to be strung up in a tree somewhere and lynched, which is going to be a lot more painful. Right? And I think what Steinbeck is up to here is he wants us to see Lenny as like this innocent character that is he doesn't mean any harm, but he still causes harm, right? So his intentions are good. He's like a child. He's innocent, but the world is not innocent, and the world is not going to treat him with his intentions in mind. So anyway, here's some of Mice and Men memes. Let's I don't know why I'm so big all of a sudden here. See, oh wow, okay. Technical difficulties. Okay, I'm going to take a pause here. Okay, and we're back. So this is like a major twist ending in literature, right? So there's just like a couple things here that are funny. Anyway, another thing that you need to know about this is that this is referenced everywhere in literature and film and television, right? So give me just a second. I'm going to pull up a list here. Okay, so if you go on Wikipedia and you type Of Mice and Men in pop culture, here's the list of times that this has been referenced in popular culture, right? So I mean, we got The Elder Scrolls, Oblivion, we've got Fallout, Uncharted, we've got Zelda, right, as far as popular video game properties go. We've got Bates Motel, Tenacious D, The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead's the famous one, right? It's that scene where, let's look it up. The Walking Dead, Of Mice and Men. And it's that famous scene where Carol tells that little girl to look at the flowers and then shoots her, right? That's Of Mice and Men. That's ripped straight out of it. She's like, look at the flowers, just the same way as George says, look across the river. So if there's a popular show that you like, Psych, Power Rangers, Mystery Science Theater, My Name is Earl, Lost, How I Met Your Mother, The Simpsons, Family Guy, King of the Hill, all of these famous shows, King of the Hill episode, Robot Chicken, South Park, Transformers, Archer, The Cleveland Show, right? All of these really famous television shows have referenced Of Mice and Men over the years, right? So once you have read this book, you're probably going to start to notice references to it in a lot of different places because it's so famous. So I hope that you guys really enjoyed it. And, you'll have a discussion, and then there's going to be a final exam on this story the next lesson. So just be prepared for that. And let me know if you have any questions, or if you just want to tell me if you loved the book or if you hated it. I would just like to hear your feedback. So anyway, guys, good job reading this book. We'll talk at you later.